Hello, my name is BJ Munch, and today I'll be presenting a PowerPoint over the African swine fever, how to prevent it, and how to reduce its spread if there is an outbreak. First, we will go over an outline of everything that's in this PowerPoint. First, we'll go over the importance of the disease. Then we'll go over how contagious it is, the effects that it has on a country and a pig herd population, some of the more prevalent cases, how to prevent or how to keep your pig safe from the virus, the virus itself, South Korea and how it deals with ASF on its borders, the USD response to the spread of ASF in other countries, the plans for vaccines, and any future plans that a country would have. But first, what is African swine fever? African swine fever, or ASF for short, is a highly contagious, hemorrhagic viral disease of domestic and wild pigs, which is responsible for serious economic and production losses. It is caused by a large DNA virus of the Aspheridia family, which also infects ticks of the genus Ornithoros family. Although signs of ASF and classic swine fever, or CSF for short, may be similar, the ASF virus is unrelated to the CSF virus. ASF is a disease listed in the World Organization for Animal Health, or OIE, terrestrial animal health code, and must be reported to the OIE if there is any symptoms in your country. The importance of knowing of ASF. Spain is a very good example of why you should be very aware of ASF. There are many economic impacts that this virus caused, but I will be specific and use the impact it had on Spain. The pork producing sector in Spain had a very strong production that employed 200,000 and produced 1.2 million tons of meat in the 1980s. According to an article by Jennifer Scheik on the economic impact of African swine fever for Spain, she stated, "The production of this sector dropped," in her words. However, export restrictions restrained significant development of the Spanish pig sector. ASF imposed economic hardships on pork producers and created barriers to intra-community trade in live pigs, fresh pig meat, and certain pork products. ASF control measures also produced great economic costs to the Spanish administration. The loss was detrimental, and the effort to the controls African swine fever was grasped by the Spanish administration. Jennifer also states this administration established a coordinated program to eradicate African swine fever in Spain in March of 1985. It was approved and provided an initial financial support of $48.5 million by the European community, or euros. This put an end to such an awful virus and ultimately helped Spain's economy and is now one of the top 4 exporters of pork globally, as stated by Sanchez Vicoza in Jennifer Scheik's article. Now on to the effects and its contagions. Everything is acceptable to this virus. Unfortunately, African swine fever is a very transmittable virus that devastates all swine in its path. The only upside of this virus is humans are not susceptible to this strain, but they are carriers for it. Introduced by contaminated pork products ingested by a pig itself. Bodily fluids and contaminated objects are often introduced by feeding uncooked or undercooked contaminated pork products, which are ingested by a pig. Then it is easily spread throughout other pigs by direct contact, meaning body fluids, nasally, orally, feces, and blood, or with a contaminated object like vehicles, equipment, footwear, or clothing. Also, some species of ticks can transmit the virus, but the ticks will show no signs of infection. Severe illness and high death rates are common with ASF. Once infected, the chance of death are exceedingly high for an individual. The signs of this virus, stated by Fast Facts over ASF, include high fever, decreased appetite, and weakness. The skin may be reddened, blotchy, or have blackened lesions, especially on the ears, tail, and lower legs. Other signs may include diarrhea, abortion, and respiratory illness, nasal discharge, coughing, and difficulty breathing. Death usually occurs within 7 to 10 days, but sudden death is possible in newly exposed herds. Animals that recover from the illness can be carriers of the virus for several months. Even if you have a pig survive, they too will have to be culled to prevent any spread. Now on to cases of prevention. China has more than 50 states infected, and this is mostly wild pig populations. The Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service states that since August 2018, China has confirmed more than 50 cases of ASF. But since the Chinese government has been known to withhold accurate data concerning diseases that are spreading in their country, the number could be even higher. The disease is also spreading within the European Union, reaching 10 member states and infecting mostly the wild pig populations. As the number of cases grows, USD is increasing its vigilance and safeguard efforts against the spread of the disease to the United States, keeping the African swine fever out. The main goal of countries that are affected is to restrict the movement of livestock from affected countries and the culling and proper disposal of infected herds. Another restriction includes inspection and quality of pig feed to minimize the chance of an outbreak. Now on to the most prevalent cases in China. The first outbreak was confirmed located in the Liang province on August 3, 2018, with 1 million pigs having to be culled in an effort to halt the further spread of the virus. The government set up a 3-kilometer epidemic zone and a 10-kilometer buffer zone around the epidemic zone. A strict movement and control of live pigs was introduced, and live pig markets in infected provinces and adjacent provinces were closed to lessen the extent of the spread of the disease. The Ministry of Natural Resources, or MARA, released the 2019 edition of the ASF Epidemic Emergency Implementation Plan. In March 2019, MARA updated regulations on pig slaughterhouses before May 2019 provinces to conduct a thorough inspection of pig slaughtering enterprises without pollutant discharge permits or does not meet the animal epidemic prevention requirements shall immediately stop production and rectify before 2019 to continue slaughtering. It tasked pig slaughterer enterprises to conduct self-inspections by using PCR, which is to be implemented from April to July 2019. If ASF is detected, the slaughtering enterprise should stop production for 48 hours and then apply for evaluation to resume production. If ASF virus nucleic acid is detected in products that are sent out from a slaughterhouse due to a malconduct, the slaughter enterprise needs to recall the same batch and the activities to be suspended for at least 15 days. Hopefully these implements put in by the Chinese government will be effective, and slaughterhouses will obey the rules and not go ahead and sell out butchered meat to keep up costs. After the African swine fever outbreak, a supervision work group was promptly dispatched to Jinxiang province by the Ministry of Agricultural and Rural Affairs. Strict blockade, disinfection, killing, and disposal of animals and relevant containment materials and movement control measures were conducted in the farm. The local government launched the African Swine Fever Contingency Plan, an emergency response according to standards and protocols for ASF. All live pigs and animal products were prohibited to enter and exit the area. Pigs in China are reared across a wide range of farm types, including units similar to modern U.S. production systems. However, much of the pork consumed is still from small household units fed the food scraps of a family or neighborhood. And the slaughter and sale of pig is often through modern slaughter facilities and supermarkets, but much of the pork is sold without refrigeration, with local slaughterhouses and sales from neighborhood vendors. The swine industry has never seen an ASF outbreak in such a production landscape, and control measures are untested. SHIC added the Chinese industry has had difficulties in controlling FMD and CSF and has relied on the use of vaccines very heavily. As a vaccine is not available for ASF, the industry is thus reliant on heightened biosecurity, rapid diagnosis, complete isolation, and elimination of affected pigs and contaminated materials in an affected area. Now on to South Korea. South Korea, with the spread of the African swine fever in China, the South Korean government has started taking even more precautions in their country's quarantine protocols. To reduce the chance that ASF spreads their part of the Korean peninsula, the movement of livestock has been stopped from affected countries. Travelers are being screened for any ASF material, including pork, clothing that may be infected, or the person themselves. Access to pig herds and slaughterhouses have been restricted to the public, and a public information campaign has been undertaken to help get the public up to speed on the virus and help educate them to reduce the spread of the virus. With the threat of ASF being so close to South Korea, the government has ramped up on funding and research of ASF to try and reduce the effects of this insidious virus and help affected companies by producing a vaccine. One of the biggest vectors of infection could come from North Korea. This chance of outbreak comes from refugees that are fleeing the hermit nation that could bring over an infected pork, or just by being carriers of the virus due to being in contact with an infected surface or a carcass. But since the demilitarization zone is the border for both North and South Korea, this allows the South Korea a large level of protection, especially since with the large amount of fencing, the ramped up surveillance and patrols, the mining of the DMZ, and that no animals are really allowed to go in and out since it sets off a lot of warnings. This will keep a lot of the vectors of infection safe from just a land crossing, and they'll only have to worry about refugees coming from boats or straight out of one of the checkpoints, which is very uncommon. Now, the USD response to the whole ASF problem. The USD is a very important contribute to this virus. The Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service also states, as part of its overall mission to protect American agriculture, the United States Department of Agriculture, or USD, Animal and Plant Health Inspection Services works to keep the country's livestock and poultry healthy in two ways. First, by keeping foreign animal diseases out of the country, and second, by dealing with disease issues that affect our nation's herds and flocks. Together, these efforts protect American producers, their livelihoods, our food supply, and ultimately our nation's agricultural prosperity, including opportunities for international trade. The USD in full force to protect against this disease by first collaborating with states, industry, and producers to ensure everyone follows on-farm biosecurity and best practices, including for garbage feeding in states where this is allowed, to make sure that no contaminated products reach the pigs. Lastly, working with the CBP staff at ports of entry to increase passenger and baggage screening for prohibited products from affected countries. Of course, prevention is key, but the USD is ready and has a plan to respond should African swine fever be detected. They stay up to date and adjust things based upon current epidemiology information to ensure it remains as strong and effective as possible. Working with the CBP, the USD has introduced a trained dog team called the Beagle Brigade, which, if you are looking at the PowerPoint, you can see one of the senior members, pictured below, that is comprised of a squad of beagles and trained handlers. Their main mission is to sniff out any prohibited agricultural items that might enter the U.S., ranging from pork, grains, or anything that could be infected with ASF materials. This squad hopes to reduce the infection of American pig herds through tainted foods or travelers' clothing. Now onto the virus itself. The African swine fever virus, as you can see in the pictures, is a double-stranded DNA virus with a complex molecular structure. This makes it very hard for vaccines to be constructed from this virus, since it changes very fast and is very hard to neutralize and able to extract a proper vaccine from it. The African swine fever virus is a causative agent of African swine fever, or ASF. The virus causes a hemorrhagic fever with high mortality rates in pigs, but persistently infects its natural host, warthogs, bush pigs, and soft ticks of the genus Orthodoros, which likely act as a vector with no disease signs. ASFV is a large double-stranded virus which replicates in the cytoplasm of an infected cell and then explodes to spread the virus and reproduce. ASF is the only known virus with a double-stranded DNA genome transmitted by arthropods. The virus causes a lethal hemorrhagic disease in domestic pigs. Some isolates can cause death of animals as quickly as a week after infection. In other species, the virus causes no obvious disease signs. ASFV is an endemic to sub-Saharan Africa and exists in the wild through a cycle of infection between ticks and wild pigs, bush pigs, and warthogs. The disease was first described after European settlers brought pigs in the areas endemic with ASFV, and is such an example of an emerging infectious disease. Vaccines and future plans for ASF. The vaccine is still a work in progress, since it is so hard to track down the virus and keep it from mutating before it goes on to infect more animals. Identification of the ASFV gene involves in violence and the characterization of mechanisms used by the virus to evade the immune response of the host are recognized as critical steps in the development of the vaccine. Currently, there are several reports of the protection elicited by the experimental vaccines based in live authentic ASFV containing single or double gene depletions in the genome and other different approaches, including DNA vaccines. Some of them might turn into successful vaccine candidates. Nowadays, vaccines to be used in the field should meet a number of requirements to pass proper vaccination screenings. Until an effective vaccine is developed, the possibility of using antivirals remains. Antivirals are useful for an early control of virus spread after an outbreak. In addition, the combination of antivirals with vaccination protocols could be applied to elicit the immune response required for effective protection against the disease, helping to keep pig herds from completely being killed by the disease. A financial plan needs to be developed to provide immediate provision of contingency funds to respond to disease emergencies, to make sure that everything is tracked down and controlled before it can affect an even larger area, thus reducing the amount of pigs having to be culled and the effect on the economy lessened. These are for expenditure required over and above normal operation costs for government veterinary services. Plans should be approved by government departments, including economic planning authorities and the Department of Finance. As with the last slide, the USDA is already on it. Veterinarians across the nation have been put up to date of the virus and have been given slides on what symptoms to watch for, and also have been briefed on who to contact in the case ASF is detected in the United States. A resource plan. The funds may cover the cost of the whole eradication campaign, which would, like in China, cover a certain area that needs to be completely exterminated, no questions asked, and then a buffer zone, which may see some pigs culled and others kept to see if the disease has spread that far, as kind of a control. The resource plan usually covers the initial phase of the campaign, pending a review of the outbreak and the control program and the funds required to finalize the eradication. Excuse me. These would cover the expenses of the loss of livestock to producers and individual farmers, as to make it worth it to actually notify the authorities that ASF has been found in your herd, instead of getting them slaughtered immediately and ditching it off without having to lose profits. This keeps the spread of ASF from, spreading. That and Zoetis is one of the leading vaccine developers, as the USD have given them 2 patents to develop vaccines, and the research is now ongoing. That in South Korea, with being so close to affected areas, has started their own vaccine program that has seen increased funding excuse that, it has seen increased funding as China's epidemic begins to worsen and the chances of North Korea having an outbreak increases. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I will now take any questions if there are any.